Hello everyone, thanks for checking out my channel. Welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel. Recently, I've been following and looking into the career of Erika the Goober and her work. It's been really interesting to see how she works and her success as an artist. She focuses a lot on character art and illustration, which is basically exactly what I want to do. She's a lot bigger on Instagram than on YouTube, but I'll link both of her profiles below. So for May, she released her own MerMay 2020 prompt list, and I was looking for a list, so hers seemed great. Hers was really nice because it wasn't an everyday list where it was like a lot of pressure to get things done every single day, and if you had anything else to do, it was hard to pick and choose. It was about every other day or every 2 days instead, which made it a lot easier to complete, and I think that's a big reason her list was popular, because it was more geared towards success of everyone rather than just a huge list of an unattainable thing. So this illustration was for the second day of her MerMay prompt list, and the theme was clouds. I definitely had the same idea as basically everybody else who did this prompt of making the hair into clouds. Because it was a mermaid, I felt like it made the most sense to make her hair clouds rather than anything else because they're in the ocean, but I honestly didn't think that hard because I wasn't in a rush yet because it was only day 2, but I didn't want to get behind. Thinking on it now, I could have like put her in the sky and made her like a mermaid of the sky and like swimming through clouds or something a little more creative. This is what I ended up with. I know the actual video is past this part a little bit, but to begin with, I started out with a basic thumbnail like most people. I didn't make a mood board or anything, which is something you really should do when you're doing illustrations, but I normally don't make mood boards because I just get into it too fast and don't look up anything, which isn't a great process, but it's what I do for now. It's something I should start doing. I love making characters super flowy and free. That's why I especially love drawing mermaids. So MerMay is like the perfect time for me. I usually draw a line of motion to start the build of the character. The line of motion is just like a one line that is a curved line, not straight, so you can build the figure off of that and make it so they look like they're not stiff and in a straight line. A straight line is never a good thing to have in a character if you're trying to make a dynamic pose. So I always start with a curved line, which is especially easy with a mermaid because their tail, you can curve it in more ways than would be possible with normal human anatomy. So to go along with that line of action of keeping the character fluid and free, I like to keep the first sketch also very just free, like longer strokes and less focus on correct anatomy and more focus on the posture and the pose and making sure it is interesting rather than 100% correct. Then after that, I go in with the more detailed sketch where I work out more of the details and make sure it looks more correct for anatomy, and I transform and modify things to make it look correct. I wish I could say I based this character off of a real fish, but like I said earlier, I didn't make a mood board. I didn't really research anything for this one, so I just made up fins from just drawing mermaids all the time. And then I just kept adding more fins or more flowy things wherever I wanted, like on the tail. And I didn't think the ears were exciting enough, but I also didn't want to make like the standard mermaid, like fish fin ears, so I wanted to give her more humanoid-ish ears and add something else, and they ended up looking almost like the butterflies with the little, like, I don't know, things at the bottom. And then for the hair, I wanted to make sure it was as fluffy as possible to make it look like a cloud, so I left that part very loose for the whole time. For the inking, it got a little bit more rigid, so I tried to loosen it up even more with the coloring. I also made the decision for the censoring of the chest area or like the bra or whatever. I didn't want to make it like something you had to put on every day because I don't think mermaids would actually wear clothes, so I just made it like scales that covered that. I didn't think any farther into that. I just made a natural bra of scales. I approached the inking like this, like I usually approach inking for any illustration or my comic or anything like that. I used the G pen. It's the standard pen, whatever, that comes with Clip Studio Paint. I pretty much use it at about 12 pixels every time because I use about the same canvas size every time. I like the G pen because it has really good tapered edges, so you can get a lot of line variation, especially if you up the pen size, and then it has the pressure. The colors were an interesting part for me. I usually work with such normal colors, like I just use a brown reddish skin tone for skin, and like the hair is brown or like maybe a funky color. So for this one I wanted to get a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I wanted to make it not a standard human color. So I went with like a dark unsaturated purple and worked from there. And I started with the skin color because I was pretty sure I wanted to use a darker skin color, because I 100% planned on making the hair white or like very light purple or very light blue. I want it to be very light, so I felt like a darker skin tone set that apart really nicely, especially since her hair is kind of like the focal point, since it's the cloud aspect, which was what the prompt was. I didn't use a color palette for this, so I just messed with colors until I got something I liked. So I just kept color picking and adding colors until I thought it looked okay. Looking back now, I probably would have changed the greener colors back into like a purple or a more blue color, because I feel like I got too many colors in there. The longest part of this illustration was detailing the hair. I spent a lot of time trying to get it to look like a cloud, because that fit the prompt. I want it to look like the cumulonimbus clouds, however you say that one, the like really fluffy ones. They're very common up where I live in northern Minnesota. I don't know if they're common everywhere, but I feel like every sunset they're like giant, really lit up, which makes them one of my favorite clouds. So the purple quickly became like the obvious main color of this illustration, so I made sure to shade her hair with darker purples, and I went into the darker purples and darker blues rather than like darker greens to whatever, or dark gray or gross colors like that. And then I went in with like a light blue to add the reflection of the water onto her hair, so that's why it gets really blue on the highlight parts. The skin was an interesting part to tackle because I did use a non-natural color, and pretty much the thing I've practiced with over and over is a natural skin tone. So I just went in with a darker purple, like the same kind of like you move down the color wheel a little bit and then hit darker, and then shaded the normal shading areas. And I didn't set a specific light source because like it's so distorted when it goes through water, so I just tried to make light kind of coming from all around, which is kind of what happens in water. Like I said multiple times, I did not use a lot of reference for this, which is not something I would recommend. It is better to go and use reference for all of your art. For the eyes, I was trying to do something a little bit different than I usually do. I usually don't actually draw the pupils. I just draw a flat color and I don't shade it, I don't add a shine, I don't do anything. I just put the flat color in and that's it. But for this, it obviously needed to be more detailed than that. And for some reason, I decided instead of bringing it darker, when you got closer up to the top of the eye, I was going to make it lighter. I had no pre-thought for that, nothing I was referencing, nothing I was looking at. And then I just add a little bit of glow, and I don't know, I thought they looked good, so I left them. It's not cheating, it's not bad, it's not anything. I was just too lazy. The scales on the chest were also really difficult because I wanted them to look like scales instead of just dark purple blobs or bright purple blobs, whatever they are. I wanted them to look like scales, so it looked like something that was supposed to be there. And I could not get the fade to work very well for me, so I did go in with like an overlay and then a highlight to try to make them look better. And then randomly, I just decided I wanted the eyes to glow. There was no reason, there was no thought, so I just added a little bit of the green haze to make them more fun. For the lips, I made the top lip darker and the bottom lip a little bit lighter for I don't know why. And then I just added like the shading. I went towards the pinker and added the shading on the top and the highlights and made it shiny in the bottom. See, that's probably why I should have changed the green of the fins, because the eyes would have been the only thing that were that green color and they would have like popped more rather than matching the bottom fins, which in this situation I think was not the best idea. And then for shading the fins and stuff, I was running out of time at this point, so I just quickly, I didn't make them look like scales. I didn't try to make them look like scales. I just tried to add the light source from, you know, multiple directions, I guess kind of behind for the most part. And then I went in and rendered the fins a little bit more. The main part of the tail, I didn't like draw it that fishy, but the fins, I wanted it to look more like they had the ribs and the webs of fins. Another thing for the fins, I kind of addressed them like I normally go in to paint hair, like adding a definite highlight zone and a different shadow zone in between the ribs and fins part of the fins. So I would add the highlight and make it all the way through like you do with like chunks of hair, and then add the shadow below it or whatever. The background of this piece I didn't actually do much at all with, because like I said, I was running out of time a little bit. So I just used my preset water gradient that I use in my comic all the time, and I just slapped that on there because I use it for most of my colors, which it's a very greenish blue color. And that's because in the comic I was trying to make sure it was very different from the sky. And then one of my favorite parts is actually going in and adding that add glow layer and adding extra glow to the character. I think it makes him just look really fun. And then I did use an overlay layer of more purples and dark blues to add more differentiation between the lights and the darks. And then I did add a couple of like glowing filters of light in the background, like the sun coming through the surface and having like the lines of light. I don't know what they're called. And then for the last part of this one, I started coloring over the lines, and then eventually I made a clipping layer over the original line art line and then just colored over it, because I think the harsh lines on like a digital painting make it look a lot more digital. If you can go in and get rid of some of those lines or like incorporate them into your painting, it looks a lot better in my opinion. So thank you all so much for coming by and watching this video, especially if you made it to the end. I'm working on my video stuff and my talking and all that. It's new for me and it's a little bit difficult, but thank you for checking it out and sticking around, and hit subscribe if you want to follow me on my YouTube journey and follow me for more art and all that fun stuff. Thank you so much. See you next time.